This is Squawk Pod, the morning after.
Make America great again.
Former President Trump claiming victory in the 2024 race. An electoral win, now official.
Look what happened. Is this crazy?
Our Eamon Javers takes stock of the results.
An amazing political comeback for the ages here.
And a new Washington. Emily Wilkins on the balance of power in the nation's capital.
For the Senate, it is over. Republicans have flipped the Senate.
I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Squawk Pod Election 2024. The best of today's Squawk Box. On the go, right in your ears, starts right now.
Good morning and welcome to a special edition of Squawk Box here on CNBC. We are live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I am Joe Kernen along with Becky Quick and Andrew Ross Sorkin. I was checking the House. It had been much higher in terms of the betting odds. It's 79% right now. I don't know whether the House goes or not. And the possibility of a sweep, though, 83%. These are on the betting markets, which were ahead of everything yesterday. It really were the way the individual states. Wisconsin flipped much earlier than anyone thought it had a chance, and it worked. Betting markets were much better than the polls. I don't know if you guys watched DJT yesterday. It was a little bit weird because It was up at about 43, and it went down $8
before the close.
It was actually earlier than that, and it was weird. And then it did rebound a little bit.
Now on the move in a big way this morning.
Now it's on the move back up, but it was the betting markets did not move at the same time. And I'm talking about Kalshi, all of them. None of them moved when DJT. I'm like, what is that? And it is different than just the pure betting markets. You don't know what any individual meme stock owner is seeing at any given time. But it was not obviously indicative of any. It had no predictive value when it sold off.
Eamon Javers is at the table. You have not gone to sleep, I don't believe, this evening.
I got 2 hours.
Let's talk about where the race really is. What's been called, what hasn't been called. And maybe try to make some sense of what's just happened.
Well, let's start with the electoral map. There were 7 battleground states. The big kahuna in all of this was always going to be Pennsylvania with those 19 electoral college votes. An amazing political comeback for the ages here. Pennsylvania itself, it's not even close. Some of these state polls that we saw in Pennsylvania were so close early on. Here, Trump 50.7 to Harris 48.2. And then here's how the former president reacted to it last night. Just a couple of hours ago in Mar-a-Lago, the former president triumphantly coming out to greet his supporters. Here's what he had to say.
I want to thank you all very much. This is great. These are our friends. We have thousands of friends on this incredible movement. This was a movement like nobody's ever seen before. And frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time.
Now, the former president there claiming victory last night in his speech to his supporters.
And the markets, by the way, not waiting.
Right.
The market's not waiting.
Let me ask you this. And I think because everybody's waking up trying to understand sort of what's happened, what it means. Do you look at this based on not just the presidential election, but the Senate, potentially the House, as a seismic move in the country towards the right? Do you say that this is a repudiation of the Democrats and a repudiation of the last 4 years? Do you say it's a repudiation of the left? When you go down these ballots and you look at some of the different ballot initiatives and try to sort of size them up against the vote, what does it mean to you?
I mean, I think number one overall, it's inflation, right? Inflation is an absolute killer for incumbents, and I think the American people do not feel how good this economy has been over the past couple of years. They feel price increases hitting their ability to buy groceries, hitting their ability to go out to dinner with their family. That sort of thing creates resentment. I think also one of the sleeper issues in this campaign was cost of housing. I mean, you see the cost of housing skyrocketing. A lot of frustrated buyers out there can't get into the market, people feeling their rent going up, feeling like that is hitting them where they live as well. So I think those two things primarily in terms of the economics. Right. But then you've got to look at all the social issues and say that Donald Trump is making an appeal to people based on immigration, the border, and and sort of broader social issues like transgender rights, and you've got to look at that and say the
how much do you
country
think
is more
it's the issues
with him
themselves?
than
How
not.
much do you say it was the candidate? Meaning that there's some people who have said from the beginning that she was not the strongest candidate to be in this place.
Look, there's going to be
that Biden was not the strongest candidate to be in that place.
There's going to be a lot of recriminations in the Democratic Party when the dust settles on all of this. I think the Democratic Party turned to Joe Biden after the first Trump term because they saw him as somebody who could finally beat Donald Trump. The unity around Joe Biden in the Democratic Party was never about Joe Biden himself. It was, here was a guy from Scranton with union roots who could relate to American voters and beat Trump. They loved him for that, and then when you saw that debate earlier this summer, they abandoned him the minute they thought that he couldn't beat Trump anymore, and they went with an alternative.
The question is the politics of resistance. Is that still going to be the Democratic Party's plan? Because that's what it's been for.
I mean, I don't think the Democratic Party is going to wake up this morning and say, well, we have a whole new set of issues that we now believe in, right? But there's going to be some questions about the tactics here. Did Joe Biden wait too long to get out of this race? If he was increasing in age and frailty, as we all saw, the Democrats will say, should he have done this? Should he have gotten out a year ago?
Right, but when you look at the
Democrats an opportunity,
but it also looks like the Democrats have lost almost across all demographies, right? Yeah, almost all demographies. That's a different situation.
When did you broach the even remote possibility that Trump would win the popular vote? Did you ever?
I didn't broach any of the possibilities or not broach any of the possibilities.
I think not you. Let's say just media in general. Did anyone ever? So you think it's she was a 27% popularity vice president. Now, suddenly she became something that I guess we were told was very popular. And even though she didn't do many interviews, she didn't answer many questions, she still answered questions with word salad, and yet we still were under the impression by some sectors of the media and it was always.
That's why I'm saying
it was always illusory.
Among Democrats, right?
I hope there's recrimination.
Because there wasn't a primary.
Do you think there will be among mainstream media too? You think anyone gets their news from mainstream media? I
think this was the election of long-form podcasts, right? I mean, that you could feel that political power.
I just think you're missing my point.
If you heard Trump overnight on stage, I think Dana White was the one who spoke out and gave a shout out to Joe Rogan too, on the things that came through with this. I think the big question is what happens if this is a red wave that takes over the House as well. Trump last night said, promises made, promises kept.
Right.
And I think the market is already looking at that and trying to figure out what that means.
I was talking about this late last night with Mark Short, the former Mike Pence advisor. What is Donald Trump's legislative agenda if he gets in? Obviously, tariffs is where you start. Immigration is where you start, but there's no sort of big legislative push waiting in the wings like there was back in 2017.
What about the taxes?
Taxes.
Right.
Yep. But you had repeal and replace Obamacare back in 2017.
You want to know what the legislative agenda is? I can tell you the legislative agenda. The tweet from Elon Musk. This is the policy, and you're going to see it. No, but because. And I don't know if everyone's going to understand this reference.
The kitchen sink.
This is him with the kitchen sink. But what's important about this is he also displayed a picture of himself walking into the lobby of Twitter when he first bought it with the kitchen sink.
Right.
And meaning that it's time to really slim things back.
It's time to really slim things back. And so I think there's going to be a big role that Elon Musk is going to play in this administration, or at least he's hoping to play.
If all your concerns about the terrible times that we're going to be subjected to because of Elon Musk and what he says he's going to do, the market's up about 1,300 points. So at this point, doesn't seem to be that much concern.
The question is,
austerity.
What will Elon Musk be able to do if he's given this commission, right? Because there's a lot. There've been a lot of commissions in Washington history.
Do you not see this as a repudiation of almost everything that the left has?
Yeah, that's what I just said.
I
turned into.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's what I just said.
Just saying it's inflation, and we never and the people still didn't know how good they had it with the economy, even though they still didn't have the buying power they had 4 years ago.
Well, that's the inflation issue. Yeah, absolutely.
I know
it's
that.
a huge issue.
But this is a significant I mean, look, it's across the board.
But it's also.
We may not have called it yet at NBC, but it might be a sweep.
It's
and the popular vote.
Yeah, he could end up with all of the battleground states today.
You might as well just say all of the above.
It's the border. It's the social issues.
It's the DEI. It's everything.
It's all of those.
And it's almost
lots
like
of demographics.
Once every 4 years, we get not the mainstream media legacy, coastal elitist view of the world, and you actually see what's going on in the real world once every 4 years. And that's maybe what we're seeing right now. It's a shock to people, a lot of people, but maybe not everyone.
Still to come, the balance of power in Washington.
The frustration has come in with the idea that you can no longer get anything done, and in any way, shape, or form.
Be careful what you wish for.
And the market reaction to a whole new set of policies, especially when it comes to electric vehicles that have had some benefit from government subsidies. Gee, know anyone who makes electric vehicles? Welcome back to Squawk Pod with Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Here's Andrew.
Good morning. I want to get to Washington, D.C. this morning. Emily Wilkins joins us now. She's been taking a look at the balance of power in Congress and some of the key races overnight. Good morning to you, Emily. Where do things stand?
Good morning, Andrew. Well, Republicans are starting today feeling very good, but it is not over yet, at least for the entirety of Congress. For the Senate, it is over. Republicans have flipped the Senate. They have picked up now 2 seats. That includes Ohio, where Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown was not able to outrun Trump's momentum in the state. Really, the question right now for the Senate is how big the Republican majority will be. Of course, the larger it is, the more difficult it's going to be for any one senator to hold up legislation. You guys, of course, remember how Joe Manchin was able to hold up a lot of Biden's agenda because of slim margins. So that's really what we're looking for now in the Senate. Going to the House, it's still a toss-up at this point. We've seen Republicans make some gains in Pennsylvania and Michigan, and we've seen Democrats make some gains in New York. But there are a lot of uncalled races at this point, from Virginia to Alaska. And remember, last time we didn't get a call on the House until about 2 weeks after the election. So this is going to take some time. Now, if the GOP wins the House, then Republicans unlock a process that will allow them to pass major legislation without having to get that 60-vote threshold in the Senate. But even if Democrats win, Republicans are going to have to find a way to work with them, because remember, we're approaching yet another fiscal cliff that's going to require raising the debt ceiling. And plus, if the 2017 tax law expires, many Americans would be paying more in taxes, and that is something neither party wants. Andrew?
Emily, in terms of just the timing of all of this, in terms of when you think we're going to have a better sense of where the House stands, because we're looking at the stock market now up about 1,200 points on the Dow. I think under the expectation that this could be a red sweep across the board, White House, House, Senate. Obviously, this has not been called at all. The House in particular seems to be up for grabs to some degree. At what point do you think that we will have a better sense of this?
That's a really great question, Andrew, because a lot of the races, if it continues to be this close with kind of Dems getting one, Republicans getting one, which is what we've basically seen all of tonight, a lot of it's going to come down to what we see in California. There are a number of competitive races there, a number of Republicans trying to hold on to their seats with very slim margins. A lot of these are seats that Biden won in 2020. So the question is, did Trump make a lot of gains in California as we're seeing him make some gains in other parts? And if that is the case, then yes, you could certainly see a Republican sweep and potentially a larger margin for the next speaker to work with, and potentially Republicans avoiding some of that chaos that you've seen for the last 2 years.
Emily Wilkins, thank you for that. I'm sure we'll be back to you a lot more this morning. I'm curious from you guys what you think this indicates. Do you think that the stock market, given where the prediction markets are, indicates that the stock market thinks that a sweep is happening?
I think so.
And the question is, if they don't get a sweep, so we always talk about how the markets like, to some degree, divided government. Would they like the House? Would they like the House to be Democratic for whatever reason?
All my questions.
But I think I think the frustration has come in with the idea that you can no longer get anything done, and in any way, shape, or form.
Be careful what you wish for. Gridlock is a time-tested positive for the, but it's only 2%, Andrew, and who knows where it goes from here. I don't know if I'd read too much into an embrace of a House and Senate just going crazy with Trump.
Look at other. I mean, you can look at other indicators. By the way, take aside the DJT of it all.
Look at gold.
You can look at
People
gold.
keep saying
Look at
that
the
this is
10-year.
because of certainty. The market likes certainty. I don't think there's certainty here. I don't think that's the case because I think,
Well, there's
again,
certainty about the White House. There's certainty about the Senate.
I don't think there's there's not certainty as to whether you have a full Republican sweep all the way through. And if you do, what that means, because I think there will be big changes that come down on immigration. I think it was.
But he can do a lot.
Any appointment he will want to put in place.
He can get in his whole cabinet.
Any Supreme Court nominee he wants to put through, he'll be able to put through without any checks on any of it. So there is some big change.
Pop this screen up.
You'll get some things
even
done.
before that, he can do regulatory stuff. And we heard how he's going to be a dictator. What he meant by a dictator on day one is he's going to close the border immediately. That's what he meant.
Look at Tesla. Tesla up about 15% this morning. And so the question there.
That's weird.
Yeah. So the question there is the value? I actually think it's possible that the value of whatever Elon's relationship and closest to the president will be, and whatever marketing you get from that, and all the other things.
Breaking news, this is.
May very well be.
I'm going to say it with a straight face, but breaking news, NBC is calling the election for President Trump.
Wisconsin pushes him up to 276. I think, again, this is something the markets and a lot of other people had already figured out. There's a process for doing this at NBC News and going through it. Andrew, to your point on what to anticipate from Tesla and beyond, if you look at shares of Ford and GM, they're also higher today because of the idea that you're not going to have competition coming from China with some of these companies. But with Elon, I wonder if there's a double-edged sword because
they both shouldn't be up.
About 40% of
either
Tesla's
EVs
sales come from China.
Right. It's either EVs or not. It's weird that.
Well, you're not going to get competition.
You got this red wave that's been almost anti-EV, right? Because there's been a political push almost that is anti-EV at the same time, right? So and you're going to have the drilling. So if you're going to have lower oil prices, you'd think that more combustion engines would do well. I mean, there's a lot of sort of moving pieces to this. And then the idea that Rivian, oddly enough, right, is down close to 5%. I mean, does that mean that they think that Rivian's going to be punished by Trump to help Tesla?
You would think that he's in a good position, but there's also, you would think Elon's in a pretty good position.
Well, except for, I don't know if you guys heard earlier this morning, Eunice Yoon was on from Beijing about how this is being perceived in China. She said people there kind of look at Elon Musk as a second vice president to Donald Trump.
Right.
And I wonder if at some point there's backlash to that if these tariffs do go in place and if there's massive push to punish Chinese sales. Tesla has about 40% of its sales that come from China. They don't break it out specifically, but that's what Dan Ives thinks. It's about 40% of their sals coming from China. This obviously is going to be good news for SpaceX and any of the other that are doing
Some people think that Harris might have punished, or there was a perception she might have punished Tesla. And
that's
therefore
true.
This is
maybe the stock was under as a result.
But the question is, how was Tesla punished during this period?
But
do we know? Do you have any idea about that?
How she would do that?
No. How you're saying she was?
No,
there was
saying
concern
that there was a
ahead of time that she might have punished.
And so that was a hangover. There was a hangover on the stock.
Supposedly, I don't know. Someone just
interesting. Okay.
The great Ari Emanuel, who and Rahm's brother. So I'm needling him, obviously, today. And I don't know how I don't know where he is. I hope he's okay. But I just said, man, the weather's just going to get horrible now. I mean, think about it. I mean, the climate's going to go straight into the toilet. So that was I just thought about that with Tesla. So think about that.
I'm going to try. Not too hard, but I'm going to try.
Thank you for listening to Squawk Pod. We'll be sending out a few mini pods today to get you the latest and the greatest from our morning after show with Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Stay tuned for more. Be sure to like, follow, or subscribe to Squawk Pod wherever you listen, and you won't miss a thing.